Good morning, councillors. Welcome to our Sustainable Tairawhiti meeting this morning. I'm going to ask Councillor Akuata Brown to open for us. Thank you.
Behold how good and pleasant it is when rivers dwell in unity. It is like precious oil on the head, running down on the beard of Aaron, running down on the collar of his robes.
Okay, councillors, welcome everyone. Everyone's here today. No apologies. Thank you for that. Any declarations of interest? None that I can see. So we've got stuff to do at the minutes, councillors. I'm just reading my notes. So the minutes on item 10.1, the first motion was moved by someone, but it should be moved by Councillor Seymour and seconded by Councillor Foster. Is that correct, Heather? Yes. Will Councillor Seymour and Councillor Foster be happy with being the mover and seconder? Apparently it was on the video, but we noted it wrong. Are you happy with that? Thank you. Okay, all in favour? Carried. Thank you for that. So then we go to our minutes in here, which is page 5 of 60. Take a look at that. Any questions or queries from these minutes? If not, do I have a mover for these minutes? Thank you, Councillor Faulkner. Thank you, Councillor Burdett. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Okay, action sheet, page 10. Let's take a look. 2 actions. I should get my glasses so I can really see what's going on. No questions here. Okay, no leave of absence. So councillors, I ask that you stand for a minute of silence with me as we remember the life of the lovely Nanny Maud Brown. That's Moira Brown's mother that passed away. Thank you. Ms. Kirakiri, do you as well? Can you turn your microphone on and just share that, Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we remember the life of Mrs. Karakia, who has had huge contribution to the Uawa community over many years? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have no public input or petitions for today, no extraordinary business, notice of motion or adjourned business. So councillors, I take us to our first report, which is on page 11, and that is about the traffic and parking bylaw, and you will see what is being proposed there. So is someone going to talk to us about this, or can we? Kia ora, Chris, do you want to have a quick chat to us and then we will open for questions and debate?
Yeah, certainly. Through the chair, Morena. Apologies, I'm not there in person. I've got a house full of sick kids today. The report seeks 5 decisions, 2 resolutions for the parking controls and the rest pertaining to the proposed establishment of the Traffic and Parking Subcommittee. I don't have anything to add to the report, and I'm keen to answer your questions. I think we were deliberate in bringing these 2 matters to you together so you can see the kind of decisions the subcommittee would be considering and the level of engagement the community can expect on matters of this sort of significance. So without further ado, any questions, folks?
Kia ora, thank you for that. Councillor Seymour,
No, we're not in council, are we? Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
we stand for all yes, because don't we stand for us? No, it's only
We
council.
stand for council.
Yeah.
Usually. Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you for the further feedback. I'm happy to move on page 12, 1 and 2, and I really question the need for a subcommittee for something as relatively minor in its use of time as this work, but also quite political. Our public are really interested when we decide to change parking or access or limit parking. And it's not like Sustainable Tairawhiti spends a huge amount of time on the parking bylaw, but I really do think it should remain in front of council as a whole, albeit it might be the Sustainable Tairawhiti Committee, but it then means it's in front of the public as well. And so I'm happy to move 1 and 2, Madam Chair. I can't see in the report anything that really convinces me that the onerous amount of work takes up too much time at a Sustainable Tairawhiti meeting, which is what is suggested. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I can comment on that. So 2 things. As a subcommittee, it would still be open to the public to view. The difference here is that it would meet more frequently or as required then on the regular cycle of ST, which then requires a more process behind it to get to the agenda. So it allows for that flexibility. But also does enable it's transparent and open as well to the public.
And would the subcommittee be making a recommendation to be adopted?
No,
they've got the standing, yeah. Oh, it isn't there, yeah. Okay, I've got Councillor Sheldrake and then Councillor Akuhata Brown. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually had the same thoughts as Councillor Seymour, and I'd second that motion if it was to be successful.
Thank you. Councillor Akuhata Brown.
Yeah, I support Councillor Seymour's recommendation. Respect to your clarity, Madam C, respect to the subcommittee. I just feel that when I've looked at or through some of our agenda, there hasn't been that heavier, I guess, traffic in it, respect to this request. So of course, I'm being led by staff who believe, thank you, Chris, for being in the mix, to state that this would help support, be very needed. But I'm not feeling that personally. I feel, as Councillor Sheldrake just said too, that it doesn't seem to be really highly qualified to be necessary. It's a bit ambiguous in the space I was reading. So, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I just don't think we need a subcommittee in this space, because I think, as Councillor Seymour's noted, everyone has obvious interest in the space. If we keep it in the whole space, I don't see the flexibility kind of framework being an issue based on us and our being here as a whole. So I support Councillor Seymour's recommendation as well, but I'm happy to be corrected if not.
Okay,
Right.
I am now going to pull standing orders and ask, are there any people that want to speak to support the number 3, 4 and 5 request? We've now listened to 3 speakers saying they don't, so let's even it out. I will give everyone the opportunity. Who? Chris, do you want to say something?
I had not tried to raise anything further. Is there any particular questions around that? I would certainly support what Nadine has said. We would expect more traffic and parking and speed limit related decisions in the future than we have had in the past, and it is difficult for us to get these to make these decisions in a timely manner when it comes to the normal ST rotation, plus the ST agenda gets often very, very long. So just really reinforcing what Ms. Thatcher had already said.
further away from the. Here we go. Yep, you'll be fine with that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I just note that I've had people approach me about some changes that I'm aware will fall under this, that I don't really want to come into a committee, but it's literally a change of 10-minute parking to be 20-minute parking outside a certain shop area. And I think perhaps if the concern is things such as the no parking zone, which are considered medium, maybe we just keep it at the low significance stuff can be dealt with. I don't see the worth in having a report drawn up, staff time dedicated to bringing stuff here. I think if possible, we should constrain, like there are a lot of people in this room and our time is valuable. Our staff's time is valuable. I think we should draw a line at somewhere that delineates things that don't necessarily require a report, don't require to come before all of us. If it makes pragmatic sense, and I think in some cases the staff is suggesting it does make pragmatic sense to do that.
Councillor Wharehinga and then Councillor Dowsing. Thank you.
Yeah, that was perfect points there, Councillor. Well, it's not exactly my thoughts in regards to the establishment of a subcommittee. We need to. I think we do need one, and it is for those low and maybe medium low kind of things that are out there in regards to traffic and parking. But I think at this table we get to have oversight of what those settings are in order to make sure that big things are still coming here and going through a process, because we have to balance the speed of decisions for our communities, because our community, they do expect us to make fast decisions, particularly when it's around something small like moving a 60-minute delegation to a 10-minute delegation outside of a dairy, which makes complete sense. And really, do we need that to come to here? I feel like a subcommittee would be able to deal with that. So yeah, I think that's what was missing from this report, to be quite honest, the rationalization of what the subcommittee function could fill while still having the obligation to those higher level things to this table. So yeah, so I actually support Councillor Worsnop in regards to the whakaro around the establishment of a subcommittee under those kind of frames.
Okay, Councillor Dowsing, then Councillor Foster and Faulkner. Thank you.
Thank you. We're giving this a really big hiding, but I think from my point of view, this is clearly operational, not governance. I don't understand why we're having a subcommittee or why it's at our table at all. The Director of Lifelines has made a call here that it's a safety concern and to alter that parking. What does governance have to do with discussions around whether that is appropriate or not? I don't think this should be at our table, nor the medium or low significance should be at our table. We've talked about traffic calming in Stout Street for the 6 years I've been on council, and at council level we can't get that achieved. So it's obviously not governance. It's obviously not our place to be discussing it. So having a subcommittee doesn't make sense to me. I would be pushing all of this back and delegating authority to staff to manage safety concerns.
Okay. Foster,
Yeah,
Faulkner.
thank you. Can I just get some clarity about speed issues, please? Because we do have another different forum that addresses speed in our areas. So I'm a bit confused about where speed limits and that fit into this bylaw and this proposal and with the subcommittee. So if I could just get clarity to that, and then I might be able to prioritise whether we need, in my own mind, a subcommittee or not.
Yeah, through the chair, the speed limit situation is in somewhat a state of flux due to the changes that are being made at a national level around the speed setting of speeds rule and the speed management plans that are coming out. Council will set the speed limits, but when they come, they need to when they're applied. With parking, we can change the parking resolutions and so on, and then change what's installed in the network at a later time without too much issue. But speed limits must be accurate to as close as possible setting. So this committee having the ability to change the do that timing change, so that the signage matches what's on the network is really important. So this would just smooth out that process for us. Council would still set the speed limits, but they would be enacted by this committee under that piece. So that's a more operational end of this discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, that just clarifies that speed is not involved in this. The other question I would have is how many different issues do you have relating to parking and traffic that could be addressed by a subcommittee on an annual basis? On average, over the last 5 years, say.
Given the difficulty in amending and changing the bylaw for the last 10 years, this has not been a big issue and so on. What this new bylaw does is allow us to have more flexibility in this space. So it's a new situation moving forward rather than comparing to what we've done in the past. It was very hard to change any parking in the city previously because you had to roll through a whole bylaw review and special consultative procedure. So it was like changing the entire bylaw, whereas now we can do these resolutions in a targeted manner. So it's hard to predict, but any changes to any parking in terms of those minor matters, P5s to P10s, installation of no stopping lines, these sorts of things are what we're talking about. We're not talking about going one way on Titarangi or matters like that. Those would be beyond the subcommittee, but that's the kind of things we're looking at, and there could be a number of them. It's hard to predict.
Yeah. So do you anticipate an increase in demand for parking issues and traffic issues that would warrant a subcommittee?
That seems very reasonable. Yes.
You do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Councillor Faulkner, thank you.
Just a question also, if I could, probably for our CEO as much as anything. Is there any reason why this could not, given that it's part of the wider network, be a line item in a regional land transport committee agenda, given that the city streets, etc., are all part of that?
The proposal was for a committee, so RT would be in the subcommittee of the RTC. They are under our voting authority responsibilities. They aren't part of that regional transport committee, which looks at kind of the wider network in association with NZTA. So it is specifically focused on our traffic and parking bylaw responsibilities. Ordinarily our city council hat, whereas the RTC is our regional side of things, noting that we try and look at things in an integrated way. However, these tend to relate more to the business of council. As you know, you will have people in your ear or businesses that need to achieve certain outcomes that aren't necessarily related to what's going on in the business of the RTC. So from that perspective, I think that this is more aligned to, if it was going to be under another committee, it would be looking at operations as a subcommittee of that, but it's here at ST, strategic nature in terms of connecting people.
Okay, I'm just going to put it out there, Isaac, just people that haven't spoken yet, if you want to have your 5 cents worth, now is your time, and then we can have a right of reply from Councillor.
Just a quick question to Shannon's point. Is there a requirement to have elected members be on that subcommittee? Like, is there a reason why we can't delegate authority to Director of Lifelines?
If councillors agree to that, do not come back then and say, staff made this decision, I'm not happy with this, because we now have the opportunity to be on a subcommittee. I'm just saying, if we do say delegated authority, do not then come back.
No. I'm just querying whether it's possible.
All good. Yep.
I'll have to just check with Chris on that, because I'm not sure in terms of our bylaw whether there's we're specific around council resolution or committee resolution on that.
Yeah, so that's where the committee, a committee is necessary in order to make all of these controls legal and insert them into the bylaw. So it has to be a governance level decision. The composition of the committee requires that it's 2 members or more, and our legal counsel observed that there are committees around the country that are made up of only staff members, subcommittees operating in this space at some of the larger centres that don't have any governance on them. The decision, the comfort level was thought that that a mix of staff and elected members for the first run at such a committee like this was going to be a better mix for a new initiative like this. So that was where we arrived at with these recommendations. It's necessary to have a committee, must have 2 members, doesn't necessarily need to have elected members on it.
Oh, so just to clarify, so it doesn't need a governance member? No.
Doesn't have to have elected members on the committee. You can delegate this power.
Okay, kia ora, no one else. Councillor Seymour, right of reply.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I first of all was going to ask a question, but surely once the bylaws in place, which is what 1 and 2 are about, council officers have the authority to implement those actions in respect to the bylaw, which is actually why we have bylaws. So that is my reason for, and surely if council officers want us to know that they're implementing it, then we simply get a paper to this effect, which has whatever aspect of that particular bylaw relative to, in this case, Ruru Ave, just becomes a paper that is on an agenda and it's adopted because it is consistent with the bylaw. The bylaw is the process where everybody's participated to actually get the outcome that we want. Surely. And I mean, I do think big picture issues around traffic, parking and speed are a different issue. So I'm just supporting the recommendations 1 and 2 and not having a committee and continue to function as we have, which doesn't seem to consume huge amounts of our sustainable Tairawhiti agenda.
Any final comments from?
Yeah, just so, sorry through the chair, just in response to that, it's really the bylaw, because the bylaw has been through significant change. The issue that we're highlighting is that we're more likely, and because it's flexible, more likely to need more decisions being made at a subcommittee level. So that hence why we're making a recommendation to speed up that process in anticipation that we will get more requests for changes and go from there. So it's a different space that we've been in 10 years ago with our previous bylaws. So we are trying to anticipate that.
Thank you. Supplementary to that though, and there's 2 other people who sat on that bylaw hearing around this table. That was the whole point of the bylaw, was to actually give council officers the opportunity to effectively bring into place these matters that need to be addressed. I mean, council boards have never decided whether something would be 5-minute parking or 20. That has actually been delegated to council officers, and it should go on like that.
Okay. No, we've had the right of reply, but I'm going to ask Chris to say something.
Just in regards to those final points there, the bylaw, the previous bylaw, everything was completely fixed. So be it a 5-10 minute parking area and so on, those were all completely fixed. And to change those wasn't a matter for staff. That was something that would have required a full formal review of the bylaw and the special consultant procedure to be used for consultation with the community. What we've changed here is that this new bylaw can be much more agile and flexible. And now where the bottleneck would actually, depending on when a matter came to light and when council staff are able to work on it, there could be a 3 or 4 month delay sometimes before we can get a matter like this before ST to have it changed. We do need that governance level decision. Staff can't make the changes on the network enforceable until there's been that governance level decision. And obviously we've had that conversation about it being staff members on the committee, but it needs to be a committee established with delegation from this committee to make those decisions and make those changes.
Okay, so I have a motion that was moved. Does anyone, because you can still move, I can still move number 3, 4 and 5.
That's what I was planning to do.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Foster. We're going to take them separately because, this is for 3, 4 and 5. Okay, so I'm going to put the first 2 motions that were moved by Councillor Seymour, seconded by Councillor Sheldrake. All in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we've got a mover and a seconder for number 3, 4 and 5. People, I am. This is what I'm planning to do before you interrupted me. Is anyone wanting to speak for or against this motion? Councillor Wharehinga.
The reason why I'm moving 3, 4 and 5 is because our staff have recommended this to us. They've taken the lay of the land in regards to what will be coming up in front of us, and they've they've come up with this plan as the most rational and logical plan moving forward. I'm more than happy to, I can see that there have been some really fair arguments around the table in regards to whether we have it and everything comes to ST, or, whether we don't have the subcommittee and everything comes to ST, or we don't have the subcommittee and everything goes to operations. But our operations have said that this is the way that we should be dealing with it. And they've been, by and large, working in and on this prior to us, and probably have considered all iterations of this. So I'm more than happy to move 3, 4, and 5 off the back of staff's recommendation. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you. Anyone wants to speak for it? Councillor Robinson.
I don't support 3, 4, and 5 for the reasons already espoused by Councillor Seymour. I don't believe we're going to get inundated, despite the new law, with multiple repeat efforts to change things around the city. Goodness me, the network's been settled for more than a century. And when matters like this do arise, they will touch on the lives of people for whom all of us represent and may have some connection with and some view. So I wanted to come back to this level, not a subcommittee. I would be really surprised if we got more than 2 of these a year. And this is the place to deal with the paper, get all councillors' feedback on it, and then we make a decision.
Thank you for that. Councillor Foster, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to second Councillor Furringer's proposal for 3, 4, and 5. As he said, I support the staff have acknowledged that they think that this is going to be an important subcommittee. When you see the resolution register and you see what is on it, it's a huge document, absolutely enormous. And some of those giveaways and stop signs have been there for so long, and they might need to be addressed, some of them, and some, maybe a giveaway sign needs to be a stop sign. So this gives an opportunity for, at a lesser level, to be addressed when there are concerns from the public. And hopefully this new bylaw will encourage people to look at their environment and submit some changes to make traffic flow easier and better, because things are changing rapidly with the amount of traffic we've got in the area as well. More bikes. So there's a lot of different things that will need addressing. So I encourage this, and if we can encourage speed of making decisions on minor matters, well, I'm all for it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Gregory, thank you.
Thank you. I also support 3, 4, and 5 for the reasons that Josh has already said. And I just feel that a lot of the complaints that we get are because we're not efficient in doing things fast. And this, to me, appears to be a way forward that we can actually deal with things a lot quicker and get things done for people. So I definitely support 3, 4, and 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cranston and then Dowsing.
Yeah, thanks for that. I don't support 3, 4, and 5. We've got a history in here of small things becoming big things. And I'm really worried about 2 councillors being 1 councillor. If 1 councillor is absent, you've got 1 councillor making a big call with what may look like a small thing, but actually turns into a big thing. I mean, you talk about felling a couple of trees in here and it can be a huge thing, so what might be perceived as a small issue could well be a bigger issue, and to have that decision being made by potentially 1 councillor, I think it probably is underdoing the situation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Dowsing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't support 3, 4, and 5. And in particular, it's because we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't yet exist. We're putting in place a subcommittee for a situation that is theoretical at the moment, that will have an inundation of requests around parking changes. This could come back to any meeting in the future when this problem is apparent, and we could put in place a subcommittee appropriate at the time and appropriate to the purpose. At the moment, a subcommittee of 1 or 2 elected members, like Councillor Cranston says, is tokenism, in my opinion. You don't, you go into the room, you read the report, you listen to the staff's suggestion, and you approve it. because you don't have any further knowledge than the staff's suggestion, and you don't have a quorum with you to discuss the pros and cons. So yeah, I definitely don't support it at this stage. And if in the future, giving effect to the flexibility of our new bylaw becomes an issue, then we should readdress it and put a subcommittee in place of what we deem to be the appropriate number of people.
Okay, no more discussion. You want to write a reply, Councillor Wharehinga?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I think I need to remind us that this isn't about establishing a subcommittee to review the big things that happen in our traffic and parking. Well, this is in regards to the mobility of the resolution register and the fact that people can approach us and go, hey, we want this thing changed. It's very small. And if it fits the brief, then we can adjust those in terms of resolution register. The only reason why I think that we need the subcommittee is because the terms of the bylaw dictates that we have to have governance on the subcommittee. I feel like we will be setting up future iterations of our council to have to deal with the mundane things that are in regards to adjusting the resolution register. I feel like it will be something that will just end up being viewed tokenistically, actually, by the table potentially, unless we delegate that to a subcommittee whose role is to look at these things in a timely manner on behalf of our community. I think that the subcommittee is the way to go in order to be able to provide speed to our community. I think we have it backwards if we say, let's establish it if the increase comes, because the increase will not come if we don't have the function there to meet the increase. If our community comes to us and go, hey, we want this adjusted, and it has to come to ST, and then it takes this long drawn out process, our community won't come to us for their requests because we will still be slow. Why would they come to us if we're still going to be slow? This at least gives us the function to be able to be fast, to decide on these things on behalf of our community. I also want to flip that around too, because the argument has been stated that we should establish this when we need it. I say we establish it, and if we don't need it, then we disestablish it. I would rather provide speed to our community, and if, hey, we don't see all of those requests coming through, then cool, let's disestablish it later on. But I think it's the right thing to provide this facility for our community so that we can decide fast, because that's our number one criticism, that we don't do things fast enough. This gives us speed of decision. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Kia ora. Okay, moved. Number 3, 4 and 5 was moved by Councillor Wharehinga and seconded by Councillor Foster. We'll be voting by division. All in favour, please put your hand up. Heather, it is Wharehinga, Foster, Faulkner, Worsnop, Stoltz, Gregory, Hughes. Against, it is Akuata Brown, Seymour, Sheldrake. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a casting vote. Bill Burdett, Cranston, Robertson, and Dowsing. Can someone please count and let me know? Well, then we establish a committee because I voted to establish the committee. So 3, 4 and 5 is carried. Thank you.
It isn't the precedent normally that you vote for the status quo. If the casting votes needed to be used, it is usually to retain the status quo.
The casting vote is used to vote whichever way the person who's got the casting vote wants to vote. Isn't that what a casting vote is?
Casting vote usually has a protocol around it. It is at your discretion, but it generally has a protocol around it.
Thank you, Eva, for checking. There's no status quo.
No, but the status quo is there's no committee. But anyway.
Anyway, we will establish this committee. If we don't need it, we will disestablish this committee. We're trying to be proactive. We are trying to be fast and nimble, or agile, as Amber Dunwell used to say. So thank you, staff. Thank you, Chris.
And we need to keep things.
Oh my goody, now I need to choose the subcommittee. Oh. Kerry, you're on the subcommittee, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Warsnop.
Given Andy's point that little things can sometimes become big things, and he is right.
Yep.
I propose the chair of the Regional Transport Committee and the mayor.
Oh. Come on, Patricia Seymour, it's you and me. Okay, it's the chair of the Regional Transport Committee and the mayor. Hands up, all in favour, contrary, carried. It's the person who moved not to have the committee and the person who used their casting vote to get the committee together. Far out, it feels like I already need a coffee and it's only 9:30. I know, no. Anyway, there's nothing about status quo in casting votes. I wasn't aware of it. There isn't, Heather just checked. Wouldn't be in the standing orders, it would be a gentleman's agreement. Okay. You can send us congratulation cards. Okay, councillors, while I get my second coffee for the day, we move to page 23. Joe, thank you for joining us. Dr. Graham, I mean. I thought it was 16 today, but it's really hot. I've got, yeah, it is hot. I got up at 5.
Morena Koto, yeah, I'm just here to front the quarterly update of the TRMP review. If you have any questions, please go ahead. I've got really nothing to add to the paper.
Thank you. Did you say move? Did you say move? And second it, Councillor Hughes. Any questions of Dr. Carr? No rush. Yes, Councillor Burdett.
If you move to page 23, item 5B, Waipu catchment plan, and in the lead in it says council have been negotiating with iwi hapu groups. I have mentioned in the past, in terms of the Waipu itself, from the confluence down, there's Papatipu o Pohati, to Wiwingati, and to Rifu or Waipu. Now, having asked each one of those groups who's negotiating with council, no one seems to know. So my point is here at a meeting, how do we know we're talking?
Dr. Card.
I think Yannick is, as the freshwater workstream lead, who was online, is best placed to answer that.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Through the chair, that's a question we'll need to take back to our technical rōpū to ensure that we've been talking to the right people and to ensure that our hapu groups are aware of the process and the representatives that are sitting around the table to co-design the catchment plan.
Kia ora, thank you for that.
Madam Chair, thank you for that, Yannick. The only reason I ask, my time is very nearly up, but in the future, water, as we know now, is gold. There will be no doubt applications for the use from the council, and I assume if it's successful, the Runanganui to take water from the Waipu. So I just want to see that the whole thing comes together in the correct manner and you've been talking to the right people. That's all. No disrespect to you or the team.
Thank you. Yes, Nadine.
Through your worship, so just also on that, our joint management group oversees that process, Councillor Burdett, which you're part of. So we will be asking those questions as they progress through the Waipu catchment plan. That's an extra check and balance.
Councillor Cranston and then Warsnop, thank you.
Yeah, I've heard a concern with developers that as they're going through the consenting process, they're directed to the TRMP. But then when they've done their work on it, they're being told that the TRMP is currently out of date. So it's causing a lot of angst for developers at the moment. How can we address that? Because it's still a long way away.
So through you, Chair, I'll answer that one. Yes, it is. I don't know that a long away until we change those urban growth and development provisions. So you know that we're working on the future development strategy at the moment. Once that is released, we can start to give that some weight in our consenting decision making. And alongside that, we'll also be drafting the changes that are needed to the TRMP for those growth and development aspects. So it is running as fast as we can move that along. But you are right, there will be a time where we are constrained to some extent by those existing rules that are still in place, and we can't just change like that.
There's definitely efficiencies required because there's so much development going on at the moment that this is happening as we speak, you know, and they're defining these hurdles.
Yeah, and through you, Chair, we are also looking at our consenting processes and how we can be more efficient, and our building consent processes as well, working where developers are willing and can come to us early with their pipeline of construction. We'll work with them to figure out how to stage things, and that's working well, for example, with Toitu Tairawhiti.
Thank you for that. Yes, I do want to comment on that. I know that our teams have been really trying to reach out to some of the bigger companies in town and I was part of one of the meetings and try to see how they can make it work. It is a bit of give and take from both sides, but there's a clear recognition that the plan will take a long time. But what are the smaller things that we might be able to accommodate to help in that regard?
Just like to add to that, it's not only big developers. I've heard this
Everyone.
from just
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Okay, next was Councillor Warsnop Robinson.
Yep, on page 28, I just had a note that the wetland mapping is due to be completed this year. I guess that's great information to have, but obviously it's not that useful until we ground truth it. When are we and how are we planning to do that?
Again, I think that's a question best answered by Yannick.
Through you, Madam Chair. That is a very good question, Councillor Woolsnop. That's one that we're still developing a methodology for. Our best approach will be to work with catchment groups as we go through each of the catchment plan areas. But at this stage, we still haven't consolidated a methodology. It will take some time to develop as well, and in terms of the ground truthing itself, and quite a lot of resourcing.
Supplementary to that, because obviously our freshwater plan has to be consistent with the government's overarching rules. And some of those have requirements for wetlands, which I believe are pretty much already in place. So how will we manage that, the requirement for people to actually act already, and the fact that we have an absence of information potentially for quite some time?
Through you, Madam Chair, as best we can is about as good an answer as I can offer at this stage, just simply because of the capacity constraints that we have to do all of that ground truthing work. We can do the mapping quickly, as you indicated, but the ground truthing will take time and it will take resourcing as well. We'll do it as fast as we can, and hopefully we'll line it up with our catchment planning process as well. But at this stage, we would expect some disconnect between the standards that we have to apply and the mapping that we hope to include in our schedules. that is a constraint.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Robinson, then Seymour, then Foster. Thank you.
I just want to speak to the point that Councillor Cranston raised. My view on this is that, as the CEO has said, the realities of changing the plan were going to take a lot of time. But from my experience and what I understand from the community, actually the council staff are doing a really great job being very pragmatic and working very closely with developers to find solutions. I've observed it, I've heard feedback to it, and I've experienced it personally. I want to congratulate and encourage the staff to keep doing that. I know that it's a really fraught area and resourcing is a challenge, but I think maybe we also need to share the successes of that with the wider community, so that any opinion or any perception that we're not achieving progress is actually counted, because I think some really good stuff has been achieved. And I actually really acknowledge the staff pragmatism and finding solutions in a framework which doesn't really allow for solutions. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor Seymour next. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just through you, Madam Chair, to the council officers, further to Councillor Worsnock's query around the regional wetland mapping. And it indicates here that it's going to be finished by 30 June. If there are some, we're still designing how that's going to happen, is it not expected to meet that time frame? And supplementary to that, there was quite a bit of, it wasn't done on the ground, it was done by discussion during the time, and Yana can be aware of that, of the freshwater plan. A lot of identification of regional wetlands was thrown into the mix from the wide variety of people who sat around the table at the time of the water plan. So do we expect to meet that 30 June timeframe?
Through you, Madam Chair, we can meet that 30 June timeframe for the mapping, yes, and we're on track to do that. But as I mentioned before, the actual verification, the on-the-ground work will take substantially longer.
Supplementary to that, absolutely. And so I just wonder how we do plan to verify the wetlands. Is it physically going to be visiting the wetlands that are recorded?
Through you, Madam Chair, to a certain extent, yes, absolutely. It'll be a spectrum of wetlands that we see, from the clearly obvious wetlands right through to the improved pasture grey area that regional councils have been tangling with, and everything in between. So some of those, probably some of those boundary wetlands that require a little bit more work and attention will involve on-the-ground verification. And that's what we'd be expecting, and we'll be working with landowners, iwi hapu, to verify their work.
Thank you very much. And supplementary to that, this project over years has got a very substantial number of millions beside it. And I understand, we are working with other consultants. So is it expected that maybe that work would be given to a consulting company that has been one of the team of people that have been procured to do this work?
Through you, Madam Chair, most likely it'll be a combination of staff time, consultants or contractors, and iwi hapu, and any community members that are interested in the work themselves. So through the catchment planning process, we see an opportunity to bind that all together. But as I mentioned before to Councillor Worsnock, the methodology needs to be sorted first, so we're very clear on what we need to do and how we go about doing it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anna.
Okay, I don't see any hands except Councillor Foster's. Go, Councillor Foster.
For a while. Yeah, thank you. I'll just refer to page 28 and 6, urban growth and development. And in particular, the last paragraph 5, with the existing zoned and infrastructure ready land, there is likely to be a shortfall of around 300 to 800 and 2,400 to 2,800 dwellings in Gisborne's main urban area in the short term, medium term and long term respectively. So I take it long term is 50 years, 2050, is it? And
so through you, Chair, that's 2030.
Sorry?
2030.
2030 is long-term, right? Okay.
No, sorry, 2050. Yeah.
2050 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, this starts ringing some really major alarm bells, and especially when we're looking at existing zoned infrastructure ready is kind of developers, but existing zoned is us. So how are we going to identify what areas that we need to rezone to encourage this development? And how soon are we going to address it? Because this is urgent.
Through the chair, best person to answer that is Shane. He's the workstream lead for the urban growth and development. He's just behind you.
Thank you, through the chair. It is a challenge, and that's why it was decided once we'd completed the housing and business capacity assessment, and that identified the demand of around 5,000 new dwellings in the next 30 years. And in the past, we've had a low growth area and have responded to infrastructure. So we have a workshop for the FDS after this committee meeting. We're going to go through that, and what we've identified is that, sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. So we've been in a period of low growth, and how we managed infrastructure in that period was to be responsive to infrastructure. When you have a period of medium to high growth, which is what we have projected to move into, the infrastructure will be most efficiently provided where the infrastructure leads development. So what you said earlier, that the infrastructure is at the developer's point. The developer is responsible for providing the infrastructure within their development area, but the council has the responsibility of providing, at least at the moment, in terms of Three Waters, the infrastructure to the development. We call that trunk infrastructure. Yeah. And that's where the meaty money comes in. The developer's infrastructure isn't low, but the idea of doing the future development strategy is we're required to provide, to identify new land and intensification, but also identify what it will cost to provide infrastructure to that land. So as soon as we complete the future development strategy, that'll go through into reviewing the infrastructure strategy council has prior to the 2024 long-term plan. So it is a new world we're in right now. With this increased growth, it's going to be a challenge, and that challenge will be working out how you provide that infrastructure. The government have said council is required to provide the level of capacity that is projected. They are also required to work out how that is going to be serviced by infrastructure, both hand in hand. And that's where the FDS comes in. So we'll be reviewing the TRMP and the infrastructure strategy to ensure that once we make the decisions, they're made holistically. But it is going to be a challenge. It is a whole new world, and it's not the world we've been living in the last 10 to 20 years. I was going to go on there. We are in a period of absolute uncertainty. Who will own the Three Waters? We don't know. But what is clear from this government, and I'm sure future government, is that if we plan well for our growth, and that means getting infrastructure in the right place at the right time, then we're going to have more effective, efficient cities, and that's what it's about.
Yeah. Okay. The other question is that through our spatial plan, we have identified areas within our region that are already infrastructure, like Tairawhiti Road, that we've got a lot of industry along there, and we are saying, well, that could be the future, or, is our future residential, and yet we're still giving people long-term, I wouldn't say leases, or long-term ability to use that land for industry. Well, we know we've got a huge residential demand coming on, and the other one is the dormant city buildings in town that are sitting there empty and earthquake prone, and we're hamstrung. So how are we going to address these situations?
Through you, Madam Chair, the Tairawhiti Road is a gnarly one, and that's been considered on whether it would be more appropriate to have residential in the future. That is one of the parts of work we are looking at in terms of when we are identifying where this projected growth will go. Awapuni Road and the other areas of the existing urban area will be looked at in detail to determine which is appropriate. It's very difficult, given the existing planning regime, to actually stop a developer going into Awapuni Road because the zoning provides for it. It's one of those things with when you change a zone, even if you change the zone to residential or medium density residential, those existing activities would have existing use rights under the RMA and would be able to continue operating there over time. And over time, it would change ideally, and that's how the planning works. Part of that would be the land probably would be of higher value with the new use if you zoned it residential, and therefore that's an incentive for that use to go. And many of the area, not wanting to talk about Awapuni Road, but many of those sites are low value activities that are using the land with not that much infrastructure on it. So the moving from that would be wouldn't be that difficult. I've forgotten the second part of your question.
Just about the CBD and
yeah, the CBD. Certainly, council already started some of that work in the central city framework that was developed back 2 years ago. That looks at ways of how the central city might be revitalised. That's the other part of the work stream that we're working on, encouraging the type of development that is needed to make a CBD work efficiently. And the national direction, there was a lot of talk about consenting. The national policy statement on urban development that came out in 2020 has made it very clear to councils that what is expected is to provide for intensification of residential development within the CBD and the areas around it. So it shouldn't be a surprise to council as we get further on in the FDS and in the provisions of the TRMP that they are focused on trying to provide as much of the growth projections within the existing urban area and only looking at the greenfield areas, because I think it's it's very difficult to try and provide for intensive development and don't allow a housing choice. We do have a number of people who will continue to want to live on the edges of town in those areas that are on the edge, and those will be a requirement. We have a collision of national policy statements. If we do move out, which is likely we'll be required to, we will need to work out which of the highly productive land is up for grabs. That's one of the work streams we're working on now to work out how we'll define it. So it's going to be a complex thing. It's you probably hear in my voice, it's actually really exciting. It's scary and exciting at the same time. It's one of those challenges that we've got an elephant here and we have to eat it one bite at a time. And that's how we're managing this process, by ensuring that we have good data so we can make good decisions, given the uncertainty, to see that we can plan Gisborne and Tairawhiti the best we can in the next 30 years.
Okay, thanks. Just one other question. There's an incentive pricing for, say, low value land on Awapuni Road. So how do we incentivize building owners in town who have got a earthquake prone building, low value, huge replacement costs? So how does one incentivize that area? Because that's where our growth in the city, and that's the future of our CBD, is transforming those dormant buildings into accommodation. Apartments and whatnot.
Yeah, there are a number of ways. I know in a previous life in a different council, I did a visit to Lower Hutt, and they were really successful in revitalising their CBD and their outer suburban areas by providing incentives for mixed use development. So you had shops on the ground floor and you have residential above. Often those mechanisms are outside the RMA itself. They are for things like rate relief, reduction in development contributions, those sorts of things. But money is what talks. So those will be what we were looking at. Just rezoning something, allowing for it, doesn't actually, and making a permitted activity does encourage it, but it doesn't encourage it to the extent, if you really want to make a difference, you need to look at those other methodologies. And we will be looking at those as other methods when we work on the TRMP review.
Okay, we've had several other hands who have not spoken yet. Yes, sir, please go for it.
Thanks, Shane.
So there are two key phrases used there. One was intensification and good data. I've asked multiple times and had multiple conversations with Mr. Wilson outside of this space about a report, the mystical report, which is identifying the various regions within the city and the infrastructure barriers and potentialities for subdivision for intensification. The last report you gave, the last feedback you gave me on that was that it was out for peer review. That was either late last year. Do you know the report I'm talking about? And if so, where is it? Because that is of extreme importance to our community.
This subject is dear to my mind, and I really struggle to say that as a planner, but it's really clear that infrastructure is key to building good cities. And so you can have great places to live, but you need an ability to take the effluent away and get water. I'm aware of a report that was prepared by a consultant that looked at the systematically at the different areas of the city. However, that wasn't a comprehensive report that looked at it right through to the end. We are right at the moment preparing a brief for a consultant, and we actually have some money into the infrastructure acceleration fund that might actually fund it to look at building on that report and looking at it systematically. Quite frankly, the wastewater treatment plant is very likely to be and is going to be a constraint. It was built for a certain number of people, so there will be one of those things that will be constraining. But when you go up the chain from the last pipe at the end of Kaiti and look down through the pipe, what that report did was look at that particular catchment and said, based on the pipes in there, we have thus this many dwellings. And when I looked at that report, I went, sweet, we got heaps. But what it didn't do would go through each of those pipes and decide if you got that increased and that increased, would we have a constraint here? And when that goes to a pump station, would that constrain it? And what we're commissioning now is a report that will bring all of that information together, do it for the three waters, and then come to with a comprehensive conclusion, the best you can when you're modelling, that concludes we now have this. And if we were to want to increase the development in a particular area, we would need to spend this much money on this pump station or this riser main. So I'm not Mr. Wilson, but my understanding of it, because I've delved into it in a great detail because I want that answer. And that's what we're going to commission.
So what are the timeframes you're thinking?
We need that for later this year. So I would expect we would have that within the next 5 months.
Okay, did I see any other hands? Councillor Seymour, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just say how important that piece of work is and how we have been seeking it for quite some time. It would be great to get it on the table because it will be so helpful to developers as well. I'm disappointed that it doesn't, that the work that was done didn't cover off all of the issues and bring them all together, because a piecemeal report is not going to be really helpful. I just want to ask the speaker, and again in relation to item 6 in the housing, are you or is this council looking at the requirements of including the greater Wainui Okatu area in it, where there's a lot of build and there is some potential for further subdivision, but only once we are reticulated. So are you looking at the whole city or are you looking at just bits of it? Please.
Through you, Madam Chair, we're certainly looking at the whole city and further going up the coast and to the rural settlements as well. So yes, going out, looking out in the areas between out of Kaiti and Wainui and out to Okatu. You put your finger on it that there is no reticulation out there at this point. So to try to encourage that development in that location would be significant development, but everything is on the cards when we're looking at the future development strategy. Recognising that it is a 30-year plan we're looking at here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I can understand that it's a 30-year plan. It was actually probably in Councillor Burdette's time, certainly before mine, that's 20 years ago, that Wainui had a questionnaire and was only just lost to be reticulated. So, and 20 years goes by really quickly. So we do need to give, I really think emphasis to this work, because while this is a great report, I really appreciate the data that's in it. a lot of it is that we haven't been able to move particularly quickly for this reason or that reason, this to the chief executive, and it is so important to our region. And to hear that one report around infrastructure, which we've asked for some time ago, particularly Councillor Robinson's asked for with support from other councillors, was not a complete report, is a little disappointing. So we really, if we're going to be effective on actually assisting the growth of housing, and probably a lot of brownfields housing, because there will be real resistance, I believe, to move into the productive land of the Poverty Bay Flats, which has been matters for conversation in the past. We need to keep the work, keep the pressure on getting this work completed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councillor Akuhata-Brown, thank you.
My query is just regarding page 32, the climate change. The first statement, there are no climate change impacts or implications arising from the matters in this report. I was just listening to the news today about managed retreat and adaptation, considerations. And we've just had these two mega events recently that I don't know if does it put enough strong an impetus to manage retreats and adaptations like quickly now. I'm seeing on the news my East Coast brethren dealing with inundation and flooding and all that constantly with these wet weather events. And so my question to you is just how quickly does that prioritize, I guess, doing something like be it this year, but to talk to those communities about that, retreat and adapting based on, what's happening in our region. So I was just wanting some clarity, how strong an impetus is the climate change issues we're faced with in region impacting the doing or necessary of moving people.
So Councillor Akuhata-Brown, I was actually involved with this yesterday. I was actually on the news this morning about that. Did you hear it? I wasn't aware. Oh, anyway, so you might not be aware yet because it just came out yesterday, but the government has released a 130-page document exactly addressing managed retreat having, and they specifically mentioned us. That's why they were after some comments. So those discussions will happen in the next while. So there's some guidance. I just made a comment to the Gisborne Herald, so they'll cover that today as well. Just the guidance of what is in that document. As a council, we'll analyse that, see what is relevant to our communities, and then have those tough discussions. Because like you have highlighted, we've had 6 extreme wet weather events in the last financial year. So those discussions will happen. The government are really keen for not just Tairawhiti, but the rest of New Zealand, because it's not just private property, but it's also property that councils own and waka kotahi own and the government own. So those are the tough discussions we will have to have as a nation. Yep.
And we'll have a submission for that. We'll come to the next ST in response to the
Because obviously we've seen the devastation and the ongoing issues it costs, etc., to our region, eroding budgets, etc. And so when I see point 21 also around the reliability of fresh water, that's a big, huge conversation in this region, particularly with the flats and all of that. So I'm grateful to hear that's at the top end because it's concerning. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you for that. Councillors, any more questions? If not, I did have a mover and a seconder whose names I did not write down. Councillor Dowsing and Councillor Hughes, all in favour, contrary carried. Thank you for the update. Thank you, Shane, as well. We're going to break for 15 minutes, have a nice cup of tea and come back at 10:25. Thank you. minutes past. Is Abby online? Is she going to join us? Is someone going to talk to us about? Oh, Diane, thank you. Diane, the floor is yours. We're on page 38, councillors. We are talking about the Tairawhiti Sports Facilities business case. This is just an update. I have spoken to the Minister Robinson in my office about that a while back, and in the meantime, we have delivered it to him. So he got a heads up, but now it's been, and Minister Faitri and Alan as well. So Diane, the floor is yours, and then we'll open for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. So this is a really key milestone moment. As you know, there's been work undertaken for a couple of years now and considerable contribution from the community, particularly the sporting community, obviously, to get us to this point, not only through the community facilities strategy development in 2018, but the last 2 years of constructing this business case. So really just want to let the committee see the paper is take the paper as read, but want to acknowledge the work of the partners also to get us to this point. I think it's been a very good model of agencies working to their strengths. So I do want to acknowledge Sport Gisborne Tairawhiti's CE and the work that Stefan had done to front foot a lot of the community facing meetings, and also Trust Tairawhiti in their local provision and share for the early win projects, which we're now starting to see the fruition of that. So yeah, it looks promising going forward. We're having good feedback, as the Mayor mentioned, from the business case that has been lodged already, and then discussions over the next 6 months to continue those. So it appears we're in a very good position.
Thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Faulkner, then Councillor Cranston. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, dear. Point number 14 on page 41, your overall investment program total. I'm just wondering where the budget or the breakdown is for that. My apologies if I've overlooked it somewhere, but I'd just like to know where we go to find it.
Through you, the chair, so the 118 million, so most of that is central government, obviously, with about 15 that is Trust Tairawhiti and a small portion from council.
I think you misunderstand me. It's actually what's it getting spent on?
Sorry,
what's it getting spent on?
Oh, so that's to implement the business case with a portion towards the indoor facilities, the outdoor facilities, and the regional park portion up the coast.
So do we have the breakdown of those costs at all?
I could find those for you.
You.
It's in the document.
Lovely.
So the document's attached through the link in the report.
Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, thanks for that. As has been said, it is very exciting that it has finally landed down in Wellington. There's been a lot of work going on for a lot of years to this. And I think we're seeing the value of it in the news currently, with youth doing ram raids and that, and the rationale given to the disorder that's going on at the moment is not having access to things to do. And our community has been light on that for quite a few years. So it is great to see it down in Wellington. A lot of nervousness about the quantum of the dollar requirement. That's been sort of argued in a sort of a partial per year, even though it's 100 million. Let's look at it as 10 million a year, and it kind of sounds better.
Chunk it out.
So, and that's actually started with the contribution of Trust Tairawhiti with the early wins that are going on at the moment. So that's given that initial impetus to get things happening. So that's great to see. So a little bit of nervousness. I'm sort of sitting on a line halfway between optimism and pessimism. And the pessimism is a real concern that there may be some belt tightening going on in Wellington in the near future. So hopefully they'll see it for what it is and see our need. And yeah, it'd be great to see it go somewhere. So congratulations to everyone that has been involved. It's definitely more than 2 years, Diane. It's been going on for a long time, and a lot of people involved. So thanks to everyone. Cheers.
Are you moving the paper? Seconded by Councillor Burdett. Councillor Bedette and then Councillor Akuata Brown. Thank you. Microphone.
Abby and Tyler on our behalf, hard work they've done over the last 2 years. And the whole group for having achieved a very sound business case to government, to the Minister of Finance. I had the pleasure of looking at it before, well, along with others, before we went to Wellington. They've done a brilliant job. I just hope the corresponding outcome will benefit the whole region. What I want to ask is, do we get progress reports on what's happening at the cabinet level in terms of the application? Because it's a huge one. I mean, it's well over $100 million.
Through you, Madam Chair, we're currently in discussions directly with central government. As you'll be aware, those updates will be fed back to this group, and correspondence has been great to date.
Thank you.
Councillor Akuata Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Diane, for the progress reports in this space. Of course, we are, all of us, very excited, those of us who have sat in many meeting hearing about these proposed changes and new infrastructure around sporting facilities, etc. I just wanted to know if council staff and those involved it's got an equity lens through it, as far as we've noted over my time, especially sitting in council, parts of community have a lack of infrastructure, and other, there's a need to kind of move across town to utilise infrastructure. So I just wondered if, as part of this project, these projects, that there is an equity lens, particularly for those families from low income who we know if they have access to sports, there's this real amazing opportunity that exists for them to head on out to become champions of the world. So yeah, equity was my question.
Through you, Madam Chair, in short, totally, yes. And that was what came through from the community too, was that share of resources and facilities, not only across Gisborne, but up the coast as well.
Councillors, any more questions? I'm just going to open it up for people that haven't spoken yet. If not, I might make a quick comment and then pass over to the right of reply. Yeah. I do want to congratulate Diane, Stefan, the Trust Tairawhiti team, Nadine, your team. This has been a massive amount of work pulled together. And it's like Councillor Cranston said, this has been coming all along. I want to applaud you for not just focusing on the city, because often we do forget that we serve our whole region, and people up the coast and people to the west, they deserve the same as people in the city. So thank you so much for also taking that into account. Now it is fingers crossed. We have raised it with the Minister of Finance. Hopefully they will incorporate us in budgets to come. So let's all listen on the 15th of May and see if there's a bit of this already been accounted for. But I just want to acknowledge the hard work that has gone into this. Councillor Cranston, right of reply.
Yeah, I don't really need to right reply, but on next steps, I was just next 1 to 2 months, I just wasn't sure what socialisation with regional public service leads agency forum name of a group should be in capital meant.
Through your worship, so the regional group, regional public service leads comprises chief executives and regional managers from Hawke's Bay to Tairawhiti. So we meet regularly, and it has our key connection to central government. So on the ground that they know in region what's happening, and then they can share that and do some back-end work as officials with ministers.
Thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Cranston, seconded by Councillor Bedette. All in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you. Councillors, we move to our last report of our open meeting today. Councillor Robinson, hand first up. This is quite Councillor Akuata Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is with great pleasure I move this paper. This was real democracy in action. We had 2 split votes, we had the appeals, And no one could ever say that this wrap up of this takia has not been really dived into and looked at from all angles. I listened to the appeal process live, and there were some magnificent submissions made by the appellants. And when you sat back and looked at the logic, the rationale that was submitted, this is the appropriate outcome for Te Tairawhiti. So I'm very happy today to move this paper.
Thank you for that. Councillor Akwata Brown.
I'll second that motion. For me, this embraces a whole part of my person regarding participatory democracy. I go on about it, but this is enacting that and making me personally be more accountable to my whole region, because we are district councillors, and it has been really, in my time here at the table, I have gained so much insight, so much knowledge, and the valued wisdom of those who live in our rural hinterlands. But I want to say to you that in that time of learning and gaining that experience, that has given me the space to absolutely represent the rurals, because that's my job. It isn't about saying I represent just this collective, I represent Tairawhiti as a whole. So when we went through this, this whole debate and discussion, I know there was concern, and I hear that concern, but I want to say to those listening today and to those who live in our rural sector, this is about us doing a better job of representing you in the conversations, debates in this space, this chambers, and knowing that we are interdependent. We rely on the rural sector of our community. We have family that live there, we have resident ratepayers and hardworking citizens of Tairawhiti who work and live in those spaces. I have family in those spaces. So it behoves me to do a better job representing you. And I promise you I will, because now you can choose 8. You are involved more so in the elections to electing those who will represent you at this table. So I want to thank my rural counterparts at this table now for everything you've done to support, to advocate, and to be who you are in the rural spaces that helped me be a better district councillor. And I look forward to the future of this region. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Any other discussions? Oh, lots of hands up. I thought you were just waving at me. Councillor Dowsing.
I'm pretty sure you always ignore it when I wave at you in here, don't you? I don't personally see this as a great moment to celebrate. We've in the past couple of years put in 2 different submissions that have both been overturned, and it shows that us around the table aren't doing a good enough job of finding consensus and understanding and meeting the will of our community as well as the needs of policy. So I think that we can do better at these types of decisions, be more thorough, and find those positions where we come up with the right solutions ourselves instead of relying on someone to overturn us. Thanks.
Agreed. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm happy with this decision. It was a decision that I was backing right from the start and voted for. The thing that I would really hope that this decision does now at large is encourage the rural councillors that we do have, and in particular the ones that have been here for a term, and the ones, well, obviously Councillor Seymour and Councillor Burdett, who've been here for a long time.
Digging while you're ahead.
Encourage them to stand, because rural representation is, it's a given for this region, and most city dwellers would recognise the importance of rural representation. And I must say that the rural ward candidates have done their areas proud over the last 3 years, and I want to applaud their input into the council, and I would hope that they would stand again, because having a year's experience, or 3 years experience, a term's experience, is so important in this role. So I hope from this at-large decision that would more than encourage the other councillors, the rural councillors, to stand and put their name forward. Thank you.
Councillor Burdett.
Now is the time I get to vent my spleen.
In a nice way.
Firstly, Madam Chair, thank you very much for articulating on our behalf to the Commission. I have to say the outcome, I was disappointed. Knowing full well the need of the community, especially the rural, the wider rural community. And I'll give you substance what I've just said. The last two disastrous freshers we've had on the coast involving Tokomoro Bay and Toliga, who turned up? Pat and I, Nadine, and because she was crook a week later, Rehet. Prime Minister was there, all the officials. It was only David and Nadine and our liaison officer who did a sterling job. So did Nadine on the day. So from where I sit, you know, the disappointment was when I sat and I listened to the response from those commissioners, I thought this is a lost cause, because at least the last time we got the chance to talk, several of us, the council, talk to the commissioners themselves. The former Mayor Ming Fu, and before that, myself and a couple of others. But my time's up. I'm quite happy to go. I've enjoyed while I've been here. I've just been disappointed in the outcome because I know how valuable the rural sector is to our wider district. And I just hope, fingers crossed, that they get looked after. That's me.
All in favour? Want to say something? Yes?
Yeah, I too wanted to thank you, Your Worship, for your words with the Commission. You spoke eloquently on behalf of our community. Everybody was represented by you at that table in this district, and we that sat and listened to you speak. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Very kind of you. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Okay, I declare this part of the meeting closed. We still have a long day ahead of us. Thank you, Winsley, for joining us.